And first up this week is going to be Ether Collapse book number 2, Excise, written by Ryan DeBrun. It is 445 pages, $5.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Otherworldly invasions, nuclear meltdowns converted to dark power, a quest assigned by the planet itself. 3 weeks ago, the world started anew as buildings literally stood up. Fearsome monsters materialized and humanity's way of life changed forever. Now, Rockland Barkclay must continue to protect his people from a new threat while dealing with an internal issues that keep popping up. For instance, will he choose to heed the warning of his resurrected ancestral guide as she notices the edges of an ancient conspiracy? Things take a turn for the worse thanks to a freshly awakened god, or was it the fearsome evolution of Earth's wildlife? Regardless of the cause, the group discovers something dark and twisted in the Atlantean System, invited by a recent unmanned nuclear catastrophe. The apocalypse isn't over, it's just luring everyone into a false sense of security. So there we go. This is an entertaining story. I enjoyed book number 1. I like book number 2 a little bit less, but it was still entertaining. And that's mostly because the story in book 2 takes more of a fantasy turn and kind of loses that urban apocalypse vibe from book 1 that I really enjoyed. There are still moments in the story also where it feels like the story is making up a solution to a problem instead of using the existing structure that it's already been described from the RPG mechanics. And that's just something you got to accept if you're going to enjoy this at all. The story, game mechanic wise, adds town building as the refugees from book 1 make it to the place where they can build a community. There's also an expansion of those mechanics in like this RTS fashion with bonuses and special abilities that need to build a more advanced structure. So there's a whole like real-time strategy community building aspect, which I thought was fun and interesting and a nice addition to the story. There's also a dungeon to manage, dungeon diving to do, resource gathering, and of course the normal XP grinding and action adventure stuff that was enjoyable from book 1. In this particular in the story is actually expanding in a lot of ways. It's not just these small little groups anymore that were in book 1, which I to a degree I enjoyed. The story is expanding to several thousand characters or 1,000 people as these communities coming together, and the refugees from the town they liberated are going to this safe area. And so there's going to be internal conflicts, and there's also conflicts with other sentient species that have popped up on the world, and new powers, and there's dungeons to fight, and of course like a bunch of good action. Overall, entertaining story. I did think that the cliffhanger ending was a bit wannabe, which is again one of those things like, oh, the story is just kind of making something up at the last minute to make it interesting, to return a plot point. I'm like, yeah. It didn't ruin the story for me, but again, it did drop my entertainment a little bit. So for me, the story gets a score of 7.5 out of 10. That's a real right in the middle of enjoyment. That's 7.5 out of 10 for Excise, a post-apocalyptic LitRPG, Ether Collapse book number 2.